Welcome to the Clear to Send podcast, a podcast about wireless engineering, where we educate you on Wi-Fi technology, talk about design tips, troubleshooting, interviews, and the tools. Here are your hosts, Roel and Francois.
Hi guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Clear to Send show. This is Francois, and I'm here this week with Roel. Hi Roel, how are you?
Hello, how are you doing?
Very good, very good. So in this episode, we're going to talk about target wait time, which is another new feature of 11AX. But right before, we have some news for you guys for this week.
Yeah, one of the first pieces of news for you guys is I am able to offer you guys a Wi-Fi Trek discount code. If you're planning on attending Wi-Fi Trek, maybe you're on the fence and you're thinking about it, because this year it's going to be in Nashville, Tennessee at the Gaylord Opryland Hotel. I believe it's a hotel. And I guess this is the confusing part for us because we don't know what date it actually starts on. It's either on September 17th or the 18th. Maybe CWMP can clear that up with us because there are actually two different dates on their website when you look at the schedule and when you look at the homepage. But I attended the last Wi-Fi Trek, and it was pretty good. There's a lot of great presentations. There's a lot of different people that attend this, from beginner level to a bunch of CWNEs and expert level people. You have a lot of great discussions, and the presentations were very good because they were highly technical, and some of them, even the keynote from Chuck Lusaketsky of Aruba, he gave a great presentation on 6 gigahertz that the FCC is trying to free up for Wi-Fi. But I can offer you a discount code RD10, so that's Romeo Delta and the number 10. I believe that gets you a 10% off the pricing there. So if you do plan on attending, head over to the website trek2019.com and you could sign up. I hope to attend as well. I probably will not be doing a presentation, but would like to sit in and also be in Nashville, Tennessee, because I haven't been there before. Have you been, Francois?
No, it sounds very good. I wanted to go, but I'm actually busy that week. So I'm not going to be able to make it. But yeah, Tennessee, Nashville sounds pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, I think it's a great spot for a conference. I think it's got a lot of history, a lot of music, probably a lot of whiskey as well. I know I'm a whiskey fan, so I would like to try that out. But Wi-Fi Trek, definitely a good conference to attend. They're going to have boot camps. You can take your CWMP exams there. I remember seeing a lot of people studying for their exams and then passing. So a lot of a great time for everybody there at CWMP Wi-Fi Trek. So there you go. That's the Wi-Fi Trek discount code RD10. And we'll have a link out in the show notes to go to that Wi-Fi Trek page.
And this week is Aruba Atmosphere. So this is the annual, the US version of their annual conference. And it's happening this week in Vegas. So you can follow it on Twitter. If you search for the hashtag ATM19. And so, yeah, they always have, great presentations, and people share the content on Twitter. So that's how I kind of, follow the conference if I can go. I've actually never been to Atmosphere.
Yeah, I kind of attended. I went on the very last day, I think an hour before they ended. I happened to be in Vegas for CWMP's job task analysis on CWAP or CWDP, sorry. And happened to stop by and kind of checked it out. It's a smaller conference than what I'm used to, but the content looked pretty good. A lot of stuff coming out of Aruba Atmosphere. There's a lot of great people that are attending right now. So hopefully maybe some news about some of their products, because I was looking forward to seeing what's new with Aruba Central and also Aruba IAP. And we can't forget, there's also a special Tech Field Day that's happening during this week. So that's something to tune into, which we'll link out to the show notes. It's techfieldday.com/event/ATM19.
Yeah, and it's I think they call it Mobility Field Day X, and they also have a hashtag for that. I think it's MDFX. So if you search for the hashtag MFD Mobility Field Day X and hashtag ATM19, you'll be able to follow the events.
Cool.
What else? Last week when we presented the new Cisco APs, we said that they will be compatible with the newer Catalyst 9800 controllers. And so Nicolas Darcy on Twitter, he sent us a little tweet to tell us that these access points are actually also supported by AirOS 8.9. So I guess you'll be able to use these new AX APs also on your AirOS controllers with the proper version.
Yeah, that's like bleeding edge 8.9.
Yeah. Is it the latest version?
That's way up there. I'm not even on, I'm barely just on 8.5.
Yeah. So anyway, if you're willing to upgrade, if you're brave enough to upgrade, you'll be able to support the new APs on the ARS controller.
Which they're not, I don't think they're selling yet. I try to get my hands on one to try to purchase one as a Cisco partner, and I wasn't able to because they're not, I don't think they're available yet. Probably soonish, maybe closer towards Cisco Live, but I guess when they do come out, you will be able to at least try it out. And when it comes to the Catalyst 9800, the reason why I was trying to get one is because I was able to install the 9800 cloud version on my VMware.
In your cloud?
In my private cloud. My private cloud is composed of a little Intel NUC running VMware 6.5. So I was able to install it that way. And I think we plan on doing a future episode about the 9800 because it is radically different from AirOS. Different way of thinking about how you deploy wireless, different way of configuring it. There's even like transitional templates I think that Cisco has on how you could transition your configuration from AirOS to the Catalyst 9800. And I've had it up and running. I could put my 3800, 3700 APs on there, no problem. So I'm just playing around with it and getting used to how we do wireless with the Catalyst 9800.
In the cloud.
In the cloud, my private cloud. So I have my own cloud at home, but it's a small cloud.
No, I actually love the cloud version, and you see a lot of engineers trying to set the configure the controller in their own lab, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really neat because it really does get you to play around with the Catalyst 9800, right? Having to get the physical appliance may just be out of reach for many of us because looking at the price point for the 9800, there's no way I'm going to get one of those for the home lab. But maybe at work I'll be able to play with it. But this gives us the opportunity to actually just get to see the operating system, and then we'll get familiar with the hardware as we get to play with it. But it's a good start, and we look forward to having an episode dedicated to that.
For sure. And you can even install it on your laptop if you have a VMware or something.
Yeah, if you got a pretty beefy laptop, which many people do nowadays.
Yeah.
So the next piece of news, as we continue to talk about 11AX, Cisco released a blog post highlighting Wi-Fi 6 powers real-world wireless enterprise applications. In that blog post, they really just kind of highlight the new features, efficiency, the things that we've talked about in previous episodes. But if you scroll down to the bottom of this blog post, there is a white paper from Cisco called IEEE 802.11ax, the 6th generation of Wi-Fi. And in that white paper, it's got some pretty good details in there where it talks about the drivers for 11ax,
technical details.
There's some images there that are worth looking at as they look at IoT trends, for example, which we're kind of go into in this episode. and then kind of defining what 11AX is. So it's a pretty decent white paper, I think.
Yeah.
Goes into RU allocation like we discussed in a previous episode, but worth downloading. So we'll add a link to that in the show notes, and you guys can take a look.
It's it reminded me of the one Aruba came out with. It's very similar. It's like detailing the technology and the new stuff coming up. Nice diagrams talking about the technology itself. So it's not fully marketing, garbage. But
No,
it's
I
technical.
wouldn't say it's full marketing. It is detailed with technical information, so I think it's worth having a read.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, and we're seeing the comeback of Wi-Fi Q, Wi-Fi questions, which was originated on Twitter via Lee Badman. And if you guys don't know, he retired from doing that, which many of us were like, right. Like it was a very good platform. A lot of great discussions that came out of it. But what's new, Francois, with Wi-Fi Q?
So he, the guys from Wireless LAN Association, so WLA, just asked me if they could take over the concept, and so they're gonna take over the Wi-Fi queue. From what I understood, they don't really know how it's gonna work in details for now, but they wanted to just take over the concept, and then continue the Wi-Fi queue concept, maybe on Twitter or something. So Lee has an article on his blog that he wrote out last week explaining the transition. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. The community is very helpful. So Lee started it, and then someone else will take over. So it's great. So we can keep like you said, the great platform to exchange ideas and talk about different ways of doing things, exchanging ideas as engineers. So it's nice that someone is willing to take over and keep it up.
Yeah, I hope they bring it back even better than it was before. Maybe with a much larger group of individuals, they may be able to add more to it rather than one individual doing it. And I know it seemed like a lot of work from Lee's side as he tried to come up with questions and also consider questions from people that submitted from him. But glad to see that it's coming back, and we look forward to it.
Yeah.
All right. So the next piece of news, we did want to let everyone know, Francois and I run our own wireless companies, but in addition to that, we are Ekahau partners, which means if you guys want to get a hold of Ekahau Site Survey Pro or Sidekicks, or even down to training, our companies, Packet 6 and Senfio Networks, which is owned by Francois, we can provide that information for you or help you get to quote things out for you guys if you need something very specific. But Francois, why don't you speak to it, because you actually do a lot of this more than I do.
Yeah, so I started last year, and then so we just resell the product. Most of the time, it's either people already have a license, they want a Sidekick, or they were using another software and they want to transition to Ekahau, so they want the license and the Sidekick, or they want to get trained, right? And they want to purchase a training seat, or sometimes a company would purchase like a private ECSE training kit. So I guess as partner, will be eligible to sell those to you guys if you're interested or if you have any questions.
Yeah, and that includes bundles as well. So if you want to get Ekahau Site Survey Pro with a Sidekick, or if you need a couple of Sidekicks for your team, both of us were able to help you. I'm here on the West Coast, but I do work across the United States, and same thing with you, right, Francois? Or do you work strictly in Canada?
Yeah. So for me, it would be Canada. I don't resell in the US, so it would be more Canada. But I guess they can contact you for the US.
All right, cool. So that's just a little plug from us as we try to increase our engagement with our own companies. And in a little bit related to that, Francois, Samfio has also reached a huge milestone. Is that right?
So I started the company 5 years ago, 25th of March, 2014. So it's been 5 years. So I was actually pretty happy when. Yeah, thank you. When I started the company, I was like, if I make it to 5 years, that should be fine. So, so I'm happy. I'm happy I made it up to 5 years. I mean, it's been crazy for me. Both as an engineer and a business owner, I feel like I've learned a lot. So I'm really excited about that. I'm also very excited for the future. Hopefully, I can make the company grow in the next 5 years and keep it going.
Yeah, and how did you celebrate your 5 years? Did you buy yourself a new company car, like
no.
a Ferrari or something?
I tried to purchase a Wi-Fi 6 device. No, I actually wanted to buy the Galaxy S10, and I want to see my carrier provider, and then they couldn't sell it to me on Saturday because they had a glitch. Anyway, it's complex. It's a Canadian thing. But I'm still in talk with them. Hopefully, I can get a Wi-Fi 6 phone this week or something. Would be nice, so we could actually test our AX series and provide some packet captures for the listeners.
Awesome! Yeah, looking forward to that. And congratulations again to making 5 years old with Samfio. That's awesome.
Thank you, man.
All right, so let's dive into 802.11ax target wake time. Now, I don't think this is going to be a very long discussion because overall, when
you want to save time,
overall, when we went through the document, right, there's a lot of detail to it, but ultimately, when you just step back and look at target wake time, I think it's fairly straightforward with what the target goal, the goal is of target wake time is, right? But it's a power saving mechanism for 802.11ax, but we need to consider what the objectives are, one of 802.11ax, and also the objectives of target wake time. Do you want to start off with that, Francois?
Yeah, exactly right, because they're tightly related to one another. So if we recall the objective of 802.11ax, first is to increase the performance of the Wi-Fi network by a factor of 4 while improving or not impacting power requirements. So in the objective itself, they're already talking about power requirements. And then the second objective is to provide power saving mechanisms for new emerging IoT devices, right? So here they're talking about having a more efficient network, which is what AX is all about, high efficiency. And then they're talking about power saving mechanisms. And TWT is pretty much exactly the same, right? They're going to try to use the spectrum more efficiently, so we can save time, and also we can save power.
Yeah, and some of the efficiency is going to be in the the term just slipped my mind, but we're talking about transmissions, right? And to me, it's kind of like going into having very scheduled transmissions. So there's it's less contention, basically, is what I was trying to go for. We're trying to prevent excessive contention to the medium, the shared medium. And so as we've gone from the previous discussions of 802.11ax and how the AP is starting to have more control over the wireless network of who's going to talk and when are you going to talk, and also which RU are you going to use and how many of those RUs are you going to be allocated to. The target wake time is also further extends that, because now it can actually be more efficient in scheduling those transmissions, because the clients themselves can start following a schedule of, okay, here's when I'm going to wake up and either send or receive transmissions.
Yeah, exactly. So what they're saying in the draft is the target wait time, so TWT as they referred to. It's used to help minimize contention between clients and reduce the amount of time a client in power saving mode to be awake. So the clients will operate in a non-overlapping times and or frequencies, and the frame exchange are coordinated by the access point, like you said. So the access point will have even more control in sending frames, and then according to the specific schedule. So the clients can stay asleep even longer if they want to.
Yeah, and I think it's important to highlight that because one, it should be improving the battery life of our devices, but then also considering the IoT applications and how some of these IoT devices probably aren't always connected directly to some sort of outlet, right? And they also don't transmit as much data. So you want to make that power saving a little bit more efficient in terms of the transmissions that get sent and received from these IoT devices.
Yeah, and right now some IoT devices, if they really want to be low powered, they usually use Bluetooth, because Bluetooth doesn't, especially BLE, Bluetooth low energy, doesn't use a lot of energy. So you could power those devices for years with just a small battery. But maybe we start with time, and if the IoT devices needs more bandwidth, they'll be able to leverage AX to communicate back to the network, and still saving battery, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. So what's interesting is target wake time is not that new, right? It's not first introduced in 11ax. What you found, Francois, is it was actually introduced in 802.11ah.
Yeah, so it's a technology that a saving mechanism that got introduced with 802.11ah. Sorry, and it's particularly useful for battery powered devices that communicate infrequently, so like IoT devices. So we'll see. I'm excited to see in the real life how like our regular smartphone laptops will take advantage of TWT, and see how the improvement it's gonna bring into our enterprise networks. But clearly, it's going to be a huge advantage for all those IoT devices in order to save battery.
Yeah, I'm wondering if this will be a feature implemented on the first round of APs that are coming out, that are part of the draft, right? Like, is this considered a quote unquote wave one release, and whether or not the clients will support this right off the bat? So that's something that I don't know. I don't know if you have any other information, Francois, on whether or not this will be supported from the beginning.
No, but it's actually easy to test. We can just do packet capture of the beacon frame and look for the TWT elements. And so if you see it, pretty much means they support it. So that's something we'll be able to validate pretty easily. I do have an AXAP here, but it's not broadcasting any SSID, so I cannot confirm right now. But we'll provide some more details about that.
Once we get some 11ax clients, we could actually come back to all of these 11ax discussions and put some more real world detail to it.
Yeah. If we have clients, we'll be able to identify, if they try to schedule anything, and then if they do, how long they're sleeping for, and stuff like that.
Okay. So for now, we have to just go through the draft, and when it comes to target wake time, or TWT, there are three modes of operation. You have your individual TWT, a broadcast TWT, and opportunistic PS, which I believe is opportunistic power saving, Francois?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have three mode of operations. I think the two main one will be individual and TWT. Individual, the client is pretty much choosing when they'll wake up or when they'll sleep, and then they're trying to negotiate an agreement with the access point. So everyone can know, the access point and the client can know when to wake up, when to send data, and so on. And the broadcast TWT is more for any multicast traffic or any recurrent traffic that the access point needs to send to specific stations. They also have a way of saving power for this type of traffic. So in the show notes, we actually included a diagram we took from the Aruba white paper, which is actually nice. It shows you the frames exchange of the different modes, individual, podcast, and opportunistic, so you can see a little bit how it works. We're going to go through and explain individual and broadcast. Something to keep in mind is, a lot of the complexity in AIs come from the fact that we have multi-user communications, multi-user OFDMA or multi-user MIMO, and this is the same for TWT. So you might see some complexity also in the diagrams due to the fact that the AP might be communicating to multiple users at the same time. So they have to take that into account as well when they're doing the power saving, operations.
Yeah, and also interpreting the draft and whether or not it's talking about multi-user or not can be
quite challenging,
complex in the document as well. So I think I guess we can dive into individual TWT, which I think is interesting because if like we said before, with the AP trying to control who has access, right, to the shared medium and controlling those transmissions so that there's higher efficiency. It's interesting that we could still allow the client to try to negotiate its own target wake time rather than following whatever the AP says. And to me, that's why I find that interesting is because now let's say you have one client that wants to schedule its own TWT agreement with the AP and not use the AP schedule, is that now the AP has to keep track of that. It has to go, okay, you're going to want to do your own schedule. You don't want to follow us, the group of devices here. So now I have to keep track of what you want to do. So then there adds even more complexity as we try to maybe troubleshoot for some reason target wake time and consider, okay, maybe there's this one-off device that doesn't want to follow the full schedule from the AP but want to do its own, because the client will want to send its own target wake time agreement to the AP, and then there's all these other rules also that it must comply with when it wants to send its own individual TWT, which I don't think we're actually going to dive too much into all those different rules at the moment, because there's quite a few rules that need to be followed. But originally the AP would send like its own broadcast TWT, right? Its parameters under those rules, but the client could be assigned like the specific times to wake up and exchange frames, and so that is all determined by the AP.
Yeah. So I think what's interesting with TWT is previously all those saving mechanisms, we're talking about the clients going to sleep for milliseconds pretty much, and then waking up again to exchange data, and then going back to sleep for milliseconds. With TWT, like in theory, the clients could sleep for, seconds, minutes, hours maybe, right? So, it allows, I'm thinking about IoT devices that have to communicate back to the network once a day. I mean, they could, in theory, sleep for 23 hours and 59 minutes, right? And then just wake up to do their transmission and then go back to bed to sleep for a day, right? So that's a potential that this new mechanism had, which is pretty cool.
So why don't we talk about this? You highlighted a process that we'll add in the show notes, a simple process in which this target wake time agreement occurs.
Yeah. So if we're talking about the individual TWT mode of operation, so client will be assigned specific times to wake up and exchange frames, and the schedule is determined and delivered by the AP. The clients can also negotiate that with the AP. And then we have different modes of individual TWT. They have something called explicit and something called implicit. So explicit means that the client doesn't know about the other clients' TWT values, and explicit is the contrary. So if we take like a simple process, the client wants to establish a TWT agreement. So the client will communicate its waking schedule information to the AP, and then the AP divides a schedule and delivers TWT values to the client. right? So the client
Yeah.
pretty much has a say, and then the AP has a final say, I guess. And then, like Roald said, the AP is going to have to keep track of that on top of a whole bunch of other stuff. The AP really becomes a powerhouse in AX. And then when the client wakes up to transmit a frame, it wakes up to transmit a frame according to the schedule. So the AP is pretty much expecting the clients to be sending information, and then the AP send the client the next TWT information on when to wake up again. So that's the explicit mode. So pretty much the clients negotiate an agreement with the AP. They both know when the client will wake up next. The clients wake up, send an information, and then the AP responds with the next time to wake up, and then it repeats whenever the client needs to send a frame. So that's explicit. When you have TWT implicit, the client calculates the next TWT by adding a fixed value to the current TW time. So it doesn't share that with the other, pretty much with the other stations in the BSS. So it will just do its own calculation and then just wake up at the next TWT.
Yeah, it sounds like it's trying to go rogue and set its own schedule and maybe get ahead of the other guys.
Maybe we'll see some weird stuff with the implementation of implicit mode.
Yeah, that's the thing that comes to my mind is when these clients maybe try to set their own schedule, is that they may want to talk all the time, right?
Yeah.
Versus listening to this agreement. So it's similar to like I look back at the duration field, right? I don't know if you've ever seen clients just set a long duration just so they can hog the spectrum or the frequency. This almost sounds similar to me, like if you try to interpret this as a manufacturer, device manufacturer, and go, well, maybe I just don't follow the schedule, and I will just try to set a schedule every X milliseconds and transmit.
They'll still have to contend for the medium, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So the medium
and
is
that
busy.
still adds a lot of more complexity when we talk about scheduling, but then there's still the whole contention piece.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's the individual TWT where the client pretty much negotiate an agreement with the AP.
I think the best way I would rather have this done is to have the AP control the transmissions. And so the broadcast DWT is where the AP would be setting the schedule, and it'll send all those parameters, which will be inside of a beacon frame using the target wake time element. And so I find that this would be much better and increase the efficiency for everyone.
So that's kind of what the broadcast is. The broadcast TWT is. But if you do it that way though, like if you have a client that only wants to wake up once a day, you're not improving the efficiency by having him wake up once every second, right? So it's a never-ending game, right?
But we got to consider that there's a trigger frame that gets sent. Yeah. And so if that device does not respond to that trigger frame, then he's not going to be allocated any resource units to transmit.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I see what you mean. So if he's sleeping, he's not going to respond to that trigger frame.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's my thought on this. And that's how I'm interpreting it. But again, it could be different in the real world.
So let's talk about broadcast TWT, because you're going to like that the AP is in charge entirely. So with broadcast TWT, the AP is in charge, right? So the AP will send the TWT parameters in the beacon frame using the TWT elements. So in the show notes, we actually put the structure of the TWT elements. If we manage to do some packet capture, we'll also add an example for you guys. And the TWT element is added to the beacon frame, so everyone knows about it. It can also be added to other management frames. In the standards, they're talking about probe responses and association and reassociation frames, which are very similar. If you look at the structure of the frame, they're very similar to the beacon frames, so it's not surprising. But they say it will be most of the time part of the beacon frame. Okay, so the AP would pretty much advertise the broadcast TWT parameters in the beacon frames. And then the client will use the TWT parameters from the most recently received TWT elements carried in the management frame. So most likely in the latest beacon. And then in this case, the AP is called the TWT scheduling AP, and then the client is called the TWT scheduled station. So they love those, having different denomination,
roles.
I guess, in the draft. So if you're trying to understand what they're talking about, that's what they're talking about here. And then so the AP will provide the schedule to all the clients that support broadcast TWT. We didn't talk about that yet, but when a client is supposed to advertise the fact that they support individual and or broadcast TWT whenever they connect in their association request. So I guess that's one way we'll be able to see if the client supports
if they're
TWT as well.
TWT,
Yeah, they're supposed to advertise it.
In which mode. And within the TWT element are all the details that you need to identify, what that schedule is. There's a group assignment, the target wake time that is aiming for. So I think once we actually get a hold of some of these devices and the APs, which you have an AP already, so you're just waiting to get your Samsung device, and then we'll figure out what Samsung supports in terms of target wake time, because this is one of those things where we can talk about it, but if it's actually going to be implemented, that's a different question, right?
Yeah, and I wanted to say something. I looked at the TWT elements, and I was trying to understand the size of it, and I did a quick calculation, and it could be as big as 30 bytes or 30 octets, which is pretty big if you think about it for a subfield in a header, and it's because they're adding a lot of information in the element, so you'll know exactly, the AP will tell exactly the schedule and all of that. And you have a lot more details to it, though. You'll know the operation. Is it broadcast? Is it individual TWT? And you have a lot of subfields. So Wi-Fi is not getting in any
easier. You mean as we get later protocols, it doesn't get faster and easier? No, it's more complex. I mean, and we only just scratched the surface with TWT, and I think we just didn't want to go that deep into it because there's so much about TWT that it's pretty complex, but we need to see it actually happening in order to get a better grasp of it, because there were some language in there that just flew over my head, like even if you read it multiple times.
It's not easy. I guess what we're going to do, we're going to put this section in the show notes. We can just put the sections referring to TWT in the draft, and you guys can read it if you. You
guys can take a step
if you want to. If you want to understand.
We have the exact sections highlighted. Took multiple reads. We at least get the gist of it, of what TWT is trying to achieve and what the goals are. I'm just curious of how the device manufacturers are going to interpret this and then implement it into their own chipsets, right? And whether or not we're going to see those efficiencies with TWT, and if that's going to come in this first wave of 11AX devices.
It'll be interesting to see if they use different values for when the smartphone is connected to a power source or when it's just on battery. Wow. That's just a question I have. Anyway, going back to broadcast TWT, if we're just wanting to understand the frame exchange, what will happen is that the AP will send a trigger frame to discover which clients are awake, right? And then the awake clients will respond to the AP, and then the AP will send frames to these clients. So the AP will know exactly which clients are awake. She will send the information to these clients, and then the clients can doze again.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of goes back to the previous episodes that we did about 11AX and resource units and sub channels, because in response, when those clients respond to the trigger frame and the AP knows, okay, which one of those devices are going to communicate, and using OFDMA, then the frame that the AP sends back to the clients, they will know which channel to synchronize on and send data on which channels.
Yeah, so I guess those we're gonna see more and more of those trigger frames, I guess, since the AP is in charge with AX. Also, something I wanted to mention here, they refer in the draft, they talk about service period, SP, and service period is pretty much the period during which the AP and the clients are awake and sending, receiving information. So in between two dozing or in between two naps, I guess. So that's called a service period.
I wonder if we can implement this in the real world with people and be like, I'm gonna take a nap. Just let me know when I need to do some work.
So who will be the AP? That's a big question now.
It's gonna be your boss. But I guess if you're your own boss,
who's the boss of the boss? What if you have multiple APs? You need multiple bosses.
Multiple bosses.
And then the boss is having more and more power. Does it work in society?
Maybe it won't work. Just like how we have these questions of whether or not it'll work in Wi-Fi. Because I wonder if you'll have any options to set the parameters of target wake time. Like, are those going to be adjustable with your whichever vendor you're using, or like, can you turn it off, for example? I don't know.
That's a good question. I'm not sure.
So as it gets more mature, with each vendor coming out with their 11AX access points, we'll find out soon.
Yeah, it's a good thing to have. I don't see why you would turn it off, except if it's if it's introducing issues in your network.
I asked that same question about settings that I can turn on and off currently.
Yeah. So maybe the real life is different from this, is from the IEEE standards.
Yeah, so hopefully as we continue this 11AX series, it's going to be important to understand, I guess, the ramifications of changing these different settings and understanding how this all works. Now, we will fully understand once we see the clients in action, and also how that implements with like a higher density, right? Because that's where we'll see most of the efficiencies, is in dense applications like apartment complexes is one, where ISPs are selling their own Wi-Fi solutions, right? Like Comcast can sell you a Wi-Fi service, and you just use their Comcast modem. So I can see them taking advantage of all these 11AX features, right? We talked about BSS color. You can even do target wake time. Like, let's say all those different APs that the ISP controls, maybe they can coordinate with each other when it comes to target wake time, and coordinate transmissions with multiple devices that are not part of the same, I guess, infrastructure or same unit. I don't know. I'm getting a little too far.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe. I'm not sure about that. But in theory, if you have more clients sleeping, it means they're not using the spectrum. So it means there might be more using the spectrum for someone else and making better use of the spectrum.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good way of looking at it, because now we're not having this inefficiency with power saving, where the client's waking up every
milliseconds.
So that way you can just set the schedule and say, okay, you don't need to be communicating that often unless I send this trigger frame. But yeah, we'll see how that plays out, because one, it would be nice to have better battery life, right? So your devices aren't always turning on the radio. And then two, having more efficiency over the spectrum, so not every single device is communicating or transmitting when it doesn't need to.
Yeah. Yeah, I can test the battery life when I get the Samsung phone.
All right.
But now, better battery life on the phone, does it mean longer use time or smaller phone?
Well, if we want to talk about, when we start talking about other things like MU-MIMO and the number of chains you need.
Yeah. Well, I think TWT it's a nice addition to 802AX. It's a nice, add-on to our series. So if you guys didn't know, we started this AX series a couple of weeks back. So if you want to go back and listen to the other AX episodes we did, you can go to the website cleartosend.net. We have a link at the top to our AX series, and you can find all the AX episodes. We still have a couple to make. We didn't talk about a few of the new concepts yet. So we'll do that, and then once we have more practical experience with the how different vendors implemented the AX, we'll also share that with you guys.
Yeah, because by the time we get close to finishing this series, we'll probably get a hold of both an AX AP and client, which you're halfway there, Francois.
Yeah, we'll probably have the stuff to start capturing some stuff, and hopefully I can include a TWT element, an example of a TWT elements to this podcast this week, and show you guys from a beacon frame.
Cool. Well, that's it for this episode on target wake time. Hopefully you guys understand what target wake time is all about, what its objectives are, and anything else you guys want to add to this. Maybe there's a comment you want to have, hit us up on Twitter at cleartosend, or go and leave a comment on the show notes, cleartosend.net/164, and we look forward to having that discussion with you. Anything
Thank you, guys.
Want to add, Francois?
No, not really. If you wanted to add something, let us know. If we make any mistake, just like Nicola did last week, if you want to send us a tweet, we'll just correct it in the next episode.
All right. Thank you, guys. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Thank you. Bye-bye.